Hi everyone and welcome back to the Lumbermill devlog. For those that are new here, Lumbermill is a factory builder and management game about running a lumber empire in an archipelago. In the last devlog, I began work on trade, adding systems for generating trade offers, responding to those offers, and also the beginnings of the rail system for transporting trade goods. I've continued to work on trade since last time, and the first set of trade features are now mostly complete. I've also improved the general appearance of islands, so let's get into it. I began by experimenting with creating 3D animations with 2D pixel art. The idea here is that when you complete a trade, a cart will be dispatched to the dock, travelling along rails to get there. The cart will, of course, have to turn corners, so a 3D looking animation for the carts is needed. I made the first basic prototype of a box just to make sure my made up technique works. I essentially created an isometric circle and traced the cube vertices moving around the circle. I could then duplicate for the upper vertices, link them all up with edge lines, and ended up with a fairly believable 3D rotating cube. I then took that animation and just hacked together a really basic animation to check it could feasibly look like it was going around a corner. It looked fine, but was pretty sure that could be improved for the finished animation. At that point, I was pretty sure I was ready to design the cart. I went for a wooden box held in a metal container. Was pretty indecisive about how the wheels will look, but more about that in a bit. The finished rotating animation for that part looked like this. I'm actually really pleased with how this turned out. I exported that and made the basic dock object. I created some placeholder art for it, just some isometric squares to show where the dock is, set up those sprites and added them to the new dock object. This is how that looked in the game. Docks need to be placed with one tile on land and the other 3 in water. I also spent quite a while finishing up the rail sprites. Last time I only made a few of the 15 variations needed, but now they're all complete. End pieces that don't lead anywhere have these buffer stops, just as an extra detail. So you can build a dock and connect up your rails to it. This finishes up the basic pathway needed from chopping down trees to processing them into wood products, packing them up with the trade collector, transporting completed trades by rail, and finally shipping them away to trade clients. Next, I actually needed to add the carts and code them to make their way from the collector machines to the dock. I added a field to the trade collector machines so they're able to create new carts. As there are potentially many different routes a cart could take to the dock, they needed to use pathfinding to actually reach the dock efficiently. Here I was using an overlay to test that, which highlights every tile in white, which is a potential place that a cart can move on. Basically every tile where there is a rail or a dock. I then got to work tuning the cart's speed, and with the exact same pathfinding that employees use, the cart worked as expected, taking the shortest route from collector to dock. Except it didn't have the turning animations set up yet. I exported them from Sprite and got to work setting up each of the 4 different turn animations. Each animation is actually used for 2 different turns, played forwards and backwards depending on the direction. This just makes it way easier to fix any problems with the animations or make changes later down the line. I set up the transitions for those and they were almost right. There were just a few problems making things look very janky. The first problem to solve was finding a position on the rails where the carts should sit. On the rails themselves seemed to make the most sense, so I adjusted the variables for that. At that point there were 3 more things to fix. The carts were clipping under rail tiles, the corner animations were too fast alongside regular movement, and wheels weren't always on the right side. I actually ended up spending a few days making sure everything worked correctly, including a dumb problem that took a day to trace back, which was literally just changing a method signature from a 2D vector to a 3D vector. I eventually got it working though, and carts move along rails all the way to the dock, queue up without colliding, and turn corners in 3D. You can even mess with the rails as the carts move, and they'll readjust their routes to always reach the dock. Here there are 2 wheels on the cart, as I thought it wouldn't make sense for a 4-wheeled cart to turn 90 degrees, but I'm probably going to try a 4-wheeled version and see which looks best. Next up, the dock needed some art. It's actually made up of 3 separate tiles acting as one object, as the size of the dock means rendering is a little bit more complicated than regular objects, especially as carts move along it. I started with just a simple wooden dock tile, duplicated 3 times for the start, middle and end respectively. I can detail each of these individually though, so each tile looks a bit different. These 3 tiles then rearrange themselves when the dock is rotated based on these values, so they always sit where they're supposed to. I realized that the component I created to handle this behavior might actually be useful later down the line for similar objects, so I renamed it to something a bit more generic. The first attempt at that didn't quite go to plan though. My solution to that was a pro gamer move, just manually figuring out the positions rather than trying to do it mathematically. Each sprite also needed shadows, so I added them. With the simple dock sprites all done for now, this is how those systems all looked at that point. Having been dispatched by the trade collector, the cart makes its way to the dock by rail. When it reaches the dock, it travels to the end to get picked up by a boat. The only problem with that is there is no boat yet, so I drew some beautiful placeholder art for the boat. With my masterpiece complete, I created some more placeholder animations just to give the general idea of how the boat will arrive and leave when finished. The reason for creating placeholder art at the moment is that I'm still not 100% decided on how the boat will look, or what the cargo will look like, which depends on decisions I need to make later in development, so I'm leaving it as a white rectangle for now. I added triggers to the animations to fire off events for completing trade deals and giving the player their payout. With all of that stuff combined, this is how that whole system works for now. The player accepts a trade deal and assigns it to a collector machine. When the collector is full, a cart is dispatched which travels to the dock, and once it reaches the end of the dock, a boat arrives to collect the trade and the player receives a payout. I'm planning on adding a bit of juice to the payouts just so the player can be more aware they're happening, but that's more or less the way the system will work. As a sort of refuge from game development, many of you might not know I've actually written and recorded music for a long time, including the music in these videos. Since the last video, I've actually released an EP which I've spent almost a year putting together. It's called Caught in the Sale, and it would be awesome if you check it out. I've put links in the description. I'll probably make a video or two about how I've been writing music for the game too, so let me know in the comments if you'd be interested in that. The final task for this devlog was to improve the way shallows are generated for the islands. Previously, shallows had this bubbly appearance, essentially drawing a circle at each of the edge tiles to create the effect of underwater geography. The bubbly edge looks bad though, and is extremely inefficient to generate. For some reason, half asleep at like 2 AM one morning, I came up with an idea for a shallows shader, wrote it down as a note on my phone, then swiftly realized that what I'd actually planned meant solving thousands of quadratic equations in a shader, which just didn't seem necessary or feasible. But it did lead to a brainwave for something much simpler. I opened up a new file in Photoshop and traced each of the edge tiles with a huge round brush. Each of these sprites will act as a stamp for the shallows texture, which when joined up all the way around the island will create a smooth edge. I created 3 of these with brushes of different sizes, one for each layer of shallows. The first attempt chucked out this, a stunning grey rectangle, not quite what I had in mind. Turns out I'd made the classic mistake of not actually applying the new pixels to the texture, and ended up then with this. Also not quite what I had in mind. It turned out that rather than mixing transparent pixels with previously set pixels, it was just erasing them. So I adapted the code to simply skip transparent pixels in the stamps. Then I ended up with this garbled mess before the algorithm finally worked. The shallows levels now smoothly wrap around the island, with each layer slightly offset to give a sense of depth. This only needs to be calculated once and is still quite a bit faster than the old algorithm. I also added a reputation tracker to the trade interface and spent quite a bit of time tidying it all up just to make the user experience a bit more smooth. The final result for the devlog is this. You can construct rails and docks, carts are dispatched when deals are fulfilled, and a placeholder boat comes to pick up the goods when the cart reaches the dock. Island outlines are now smooth and the trade interface feels quite a bit nicer to use. In the next devlog, I'll be having a break from trade and moving on to something entirely different, so make sure to subscribe to follow along as development progresses. To get the game when it comes out, make sure to wishlist Lumbermill on Steam. Every single wishlist helps me out hugely, and it means you'll be notified when the game comes out or goes on sale. The link is in the description. If you'd like to support the channel directly, I have a Patreon where I post early blog updates on the game's progress and other perks such as copies of the game when it comes out. Special thanks for this video go to my patrons, and in particular I'd like to thank Warner M14, Ojo Marin, Nova, Hayden, Justin Atom, Sono, Kleb, Lego Nerd, Chris Naismith, HPR, Mike James, Pepper Trollman, BD Smith, Gecko, and Dominic. That's all for this video. If you liked it, remember to subscribe and follow along as I build Lumbermill. Thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.